In this video, I will give you an introduction to shadow work so that you can decide if it's a tool that you would like to use in your journey of self-exploration and expansion. All of us engage in a curated self-presentation that's dependent on the contextual factors of the moment. So for example, are we sitting in our grandmother's living room? Are we at a bar? Are we at home interacting with people on the internet? These situations result in moderated presentations of self. But for many people, there are aspects of the self that they always attempt to keep hidden. Parts of the self that feel dark or wrong. However, according to various esoteric schools of thought, and most famously Carl Jung, these dark hidden portions of ourselves, or the shadow self, actually serve as an important catalyst for personal growth and development. Instead of rejecting portions of the self that are perceived as unacceptable, people can integrate components to have a more whole self. In addition to feeling greater acceptance of the self, it can also allow for the release of past trauma, especially childhood trauma, to expand the understanding of others, to change habits, increase the value and health of interpersonal relationships, and many other positive outcomes. But what might you find in the shadow self? Well, uncomfortable emotions such as hate, greed, jealousy, beliefs that you're not good enough or that you're unlovable, repressed desires. These can all stem from the shadow self. So people are often afraid to examine themselves in this way, but it's critical to expansion. Carl Jung said, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is." So the shadow self is not a reflection of you being a quote-unquote bad person. It exists inside everyone, or as a part of everyone, and it's a product of ego development as well as our social interactions and development throughout life. Much like other aspects of psychology, the shadow self is a byproduct of how we were raised and the characteristics that we developed to cope with our environment and those characteristics that we rejected. And so we have these multiple subconscious decisions that promoted our likelihood of safety, approval, affection, and ultimately our survival as we navigated the world reliant upon others. The shadow self is not evil. In fact, it can often contain unique aspects of the self that were repressed because they didn't previously serve us. This could be things like creativity and innovation. More importantly, there are consequences to suppressing the shadow self. So when we repress those components of self, it can result in increased mental health problems such as depression, stress, anxiety, negative self-talk, and a general lack of awareness about why we're engaging in the thoughts and behaviors that we are. This oftentimes manifests through self-limiting thoughts and behavior, so self-doubt, self-sabotage. And it brings to mind the often quoted, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. If we have these aspects of the self that we're not aware of or that we ignore that have influences on our daily lives, and we feel that we're stuck in these patterns, in order to address these patterns and to make changes, we have to be able to address the root cause. Further, We may even project our shadow selves on others and attribute motivations to them they don't truly possess. Even though we may be repressing the shadow self or doing our best to keep it at bay, this doesn't guarantee that the shadow self never emerges. So, for example, when someone's intoxicated and they have extreme rage or depression as a result of that intoxication, of letting their guard down, that's a part of our self, our shadow self, that's then emerging in this very unbalanced way. It really serves us and the people around us to integrate the shadow self. There is a lack of peer-reviewed scientific research on this subject, but many psychotherapists do engage in shadow work with their clients. It's also something that can be done independently. I don't recommend that people just jump into shadow work without any preparation or as their first sort of foray into self-development or self-help, because it is associated with quite intense emotions and experiences. Neither am I discouraging shadow work, but it is something that has to be approached responsibly. And I would also caution against people that have extremely low self-esteem or unstable sense of identity to engage in shadow work until they've addressed those issues. So, for example, you could build self-acceptance and self-love through loving kindness meditation and positive affirmations. Also, if you're not going to dedicate yourself fully to shadow work, then you should not attempt to engage in shadow work. It does take time, dedication, and persistence. It's not something that should be entered into half-heartedly. And if you're unsure in your ability to navigate the journey on your own, then I would consider working with a therapist that can provide you with support and guidance. The first step, the foundation of shadow work, is going to be comfort with your emotions. So specifically, you want to become aware and accepting of your emotions. And emotions are such an interesting phenomenon because people often use them to define themselves and their reality. Yet, whether we're thinking of the Buddhist perspective or the peer-reviewed psychological research on emotion regulation, emotions are based on our attention to and appraisal of situations. In addition, the way that we express or suppress emotions impacts the internal generation and the intensity of the emotions we experience. So it's really important to understand that emotions are not an objective or immutable aspect of our experiences. If you want more information on this topic, please see our video on mindfulness and emotion regulation. So first, people should be comfortable observing emotions in a non-reactive way. You're going to want to start by recognizing and acknowledging emotions as they arise. Experiencing and observing the emotion, not trying to suppress the emotion, not labeling it as good or bad. Then you can reflect on what triggered those emotions, and you will begin to see patterns emerge over time, and these patterns will provide insight into sources of continued negative affect, for example, and the components of the shadow self. And then once you're comfortable sitting with your emotions, experiencing them without judgment and reflecting on those emotions, then you can move on to other specific exercises, sort of a deeper dive into shadow work. And there are several exercises that can be done: journaling, free writing, affirmations, meditation, visualization, expressive activities, dream journaling. If shadow work is something that's of interest to you and you think, I have the time and the resources, emotionally, cognitively, to dedicate time each day, then I encourage you to check out our other videos in which I go into depth about how to use each of these tools as a mean to integrate the shadow self You can also check out our website where we have more information, including lists of affirmations and detailed information about the exercises. Once you begin that shadow work, you're going to notice benefits, better relationships, less judgment toward yourselves and others, greater feelings of acceptance and authenticity, more motivation and courage to live in your life's purpose. Please give this video a like. We're a new channel. It makes a huge difference to our success. And check out our other videos so that we can support you in your journey of self-exploration.